The story of Zodiac begins in Northern California in the late 1960s, when a series of murders slowly evolves into one of the most terrifying and mysterious crime cases in American history. The film opens on July 4, 1969 in Vallejo, California. Fireworks burst across the sky as people celebrate Independence Day. That same night, a young couple, Darlene Ferrin and Mike Mageau, drive to a secluded lover's lane called Blue Rock Springs Park. They sit quietly in their parked car when another vehicle suddenly pulls up behind them. At first, it seems harmless. The car leaves, but a few minutes later, it returns. A man steps out and approaches their car holding a flashlight. The light shines directly into their faces, making them believe it might be a police officer. But suddenly, the man pulls out a gun and begins firing. The attack is brutal and unexpected. Mike Mageau is shot multiple times but survives. Darlene Ferrin is fatally wounded and dies at the hospital. Before losing consciousness, Mike describes the attacker as a heavy-set white man. Police believe it may be a random act of violence until a shocking development occurs weeks later. Several newspapers, including the San Francisco Chronicle, received disturbing letters from someone claiming responsibility for the attack. Inside the envelopes are strange coded messages made of symbols and shapes. The writer demands the newspapers print his cipher on the front page. If they refuse, he threatens to go on a killing spree. At the bottom of the letters is a strange symbol, a circle with a crosshair through it. The writer signs himself with a chilling name, the Zodiac. Inside the Chronicle newsroom, crime reporter Paul Avery is assigned to cover the story. But another employee becomes deeply fascinated with the strange letters. That man is political cartoonist Robert Graysmith. While everyone else sees the letters as threats, Graysmith becomes obsessed with solving the mysterious ciphers. Eventually, a schoolteacher couple cracks part of the code. The message reveals something disturbing. The Zodiac says he enjoys killing people because it's more exciting than hunting animals. However, the cipher does not reveal his identity. The case begins to grow larger than expected, and it lands on the desks of two San Francisco detectives, Dave Toschi and Bill Armstrong. As they investigate, they discover another earlier murder that may be connected. In December 1968, teenagers David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen were shot at a lover's lane in Benicia. The similarities between the attacks suggest that the same killer could be responsible. But the Zodiac is only getting started. In September 1969, Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard are relaxing near Lake Berryessa. Out of nowhere, a strange man approaches them wearing a black executioner-style hood with the Zodiac symbol on the chest. He calmly claims he is an escaped prisoner who only needs their car and money to escape to Mexico. He asks the couple to tie each other up. Once they are helpless, he pulls out a knife and repeatedly stabs them. Before leaving, the killer walks to their car and writes a message on the door listing the execution style and date, including the dates of his previous murders. The Zodiac is keeping track of his victims. Brian Hartnell miraculously survives and provides police with details about the killer's voice and behavior. Only weeks later, the killer strikes again in the heart of San Francisco. Taxi driver Paul Stein picks up a passenger for a routine ride. When they reach the destination, the passenger suddenly pulls out a gun and shoots Stein in the head. The killer calmly wipes the taxi, tears a piece of Stein's bloody shirt, and walks away. 3 teenagers watching from a nearby window witness the crime and call the police. But during the dispatch, a critical mistake occurs. The suspect is mistakenly described as a black male instead of a white male. When officers see a suspicious white man walking near the scene, they briefly question him, but then let him go. They had unknowingly stopped the Zodiac and allowed him to walk away. Soon after, the San Francisco Chronicle receives another letter containing a piece of Paul Stein's bloody shirt. The Zodiac mocks the police for almost catching him. The Zodiac's messages begin to escalate, threatening to shoot kids in school buses. The police began escorting school buses to safely arrive to their respective schools. One night, a local television station hosts a live broadcast featuring famous defense attorney Melvin Belli. During the broadcast, a man calls in claiming to be the Zodiac. The caller says he cannot stop killing and asks for help. The conversation unfolds live on television while thousands of viewers watch in shock. Police traced the call from a mental institution and later determined it was most likely an imposter, but the fear across the city intensifies. Later, a letter arrives at Melvin Belli's home. Inside the envelope is another piece of Paul Stine's bloody shirt, proving the letter truly came from the Zodiac. In the message, the killer again speaks about losing control and hints at more violence. On Highway 132 near Modesto, a woman named Kathleen Johns is driving late at night along a highway with her infant daughter. A man pulls up beside her and tells her that one of her wheels looks loose. Trying to be helpful, he offers to fix it. After tightening the wheel, the man leaves. But moments later, the wheel comes completely off the car. Stranded on the highway with a baby, Kathleen Johns has no choice but to accept help when the same man returns and offers her a ride. She gets into his car with her baby. Kathleen noticed a filling station, but the man continued driving, claiming that it was closed. As the man continues to drive, he began telling her that he is going to throw the baby out of the window before killing her. Realizing the danger she's in, Kathleen waits for the right moment. Eventually, she manages to escape the moving car with her baby and hide in a nearby field until the man drives away. Later, when she sees a composite sketch of the Zodiac on a police poster, she immediately identifies the man who picked her up as the same person. As the investigation continues, Paul Avery writes an article about the Zodiac, mocking him and calling him a liar. One day, Avery receives a Halloween card sent to the Chronicle. On the front is a skeleton with the words, "Peekaboo. You are doomed." Inside the card, the Zodiac hints that Avery himself could become the killer's next victim. The card also contains cryptic references to another possible murder victim named Donna Lass, suggesting she may have been abducted and killed by the Zodiac as well. The message feels like a direct threat. After receiving the letter, Avery begins carrying a gun and becomes visibly shaken by the idea that the killer may be watching him. The Zodiac has now turned his attention to the very people trying to expose him. Over time, investigators begin focusing on one particular suspect, Arthur Lee Allen. Allen was reported to police by a friend who claimed Allen once talked about wanting to hunt humans and mentioned the name Zodiac. When detectives investigate him, they find several disturbing coincidences. Allen owned a watch with the Zodiac symbol on it. He lived near some of the crime scenes, and his behavior often seemed suspicious. Despite this, the evidence never fully lines up. His handwriting doesn't match the Zodiac letters. His fingerprints don't match either. Without physical proof, police cannot charge him. As the years pass, the case begins destroying the lives of those involved. Paul Avery becomes overwhelmed by the pressure and spirals into alcoholism before eventually leaving journalism. Detective Bill Armstrong transfers away from the investigation. Detective Dave Toschi grows frustrated with the lack of progress. But Robert Graysmith refuses to give up. What began as curiosity has turned into a full obsession. Graysmith begins conducting his own investigation, interviewing witnesses, studying police files, and tracking down leads others had forgotten. During one lead, Graysmith visits a man connected to suspicious movie posters that may relate to the Zodiac's coded messages and showed him some negative samples. The man leads him into the dark basement of his house. The basement is quiet, filled with film canisters and strange sounds echoing through the darkness. Suddenly, Graysmith realizes he might be alone underground, with someone who could potentially be connected to the Zodiac. The tension becomes terrifying. But eventually, he manages to leave safely. Years later, Graysmith was able to track down a friend of one of the Zodiac's victims. She remembers the man who has attended to her friend's party and remembered his name that sounded like Lee. And this is one of the major clues Graysmith has been looking for. Graysmith meets again with Detective Dave Toschi. The two sit together at a restaurant, reviewing evidence and discussing the investigation that has haunted them for years. As they analyze the clues, witness descriptions, timelines, and suspicious behavior, they slowly come to the same conclusion. The evidence strongly points toward Arthur Lee Allen. Everything seems to align. But the one thing they still lack is hard proof. Without matching fingerprints, handwriting, or DNA, the case could never hold up in court. They believe they know the killer, but legally, they can't prove it. Near the end of the story, Robert Graysmith decides to confront the mystery directly. He goes to the hardware store where Arthur Lee Allen works. Inside the store, Graysmith watches Allen moving around like an ordinary employee. Eventually, Allen notices him. For a brief moment, the two men lock eyes. It's a silent, tense stare between a man who believes he has solved the mystery and the man he believes is the Zodiac Killer. But there is no confession, no arrest, only uncertainty. Years later, Mike McGall was later called to identify the Zodiac. Without hesitation, he was able to point Arthur Lee Allen from the photo lineup. Soon after, investigators attempt to extract DNA from stamps used on Zodiac letters. But the results remain inconclusive. Arthur Lee Allen dies in 1992 without ever being charged. Despite decades of investigation, the identity of the Zodiac Killer is never officially confirmed. The man who terrorized Northern California, who taunted the police and newspapers with cryptic letters, and who turned murder into a twisted game, was never brought to justice. And the mystery of the Zodiac Killer continues to haunt history to this day. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more movie recaps.